Hello, everyone. After some technical difficulties, we're actually going to get this recorded. I'm here with an old friend of mine, who I did a bunch of work with in how long ago was that? 20.
I'd say it's probably close to about 6 years ago at this point when we first started.
Mm-hmm. We were both really tiny then.
We were both really tiny then.
Um, and I just haven't bothered with YouTube as much, and have been focusing on streaming and writing books. But you became something nice. I'm trying to
I
flatter him.
wouldn't go
Can
that
you
far.
tell? So I floated the idea of doing an interview with my old friend, who strangely I've been talking to for 6 years. Are we really that old now?
I believe so. Hang on, let me just check. No, it's actually longer than 6 years. We first started working together in 2016.
Oh God, it's been back in
7
my day. So I floated the idea to my patrons. Hey,
the old Blitzkrieg series.
would you guys like me to do an interview with Remleiz and me answering some questions? And then they just started submitting questions. They didn't say yes or no. They just started submitting questions. I'm like, I haven't even asked him yet. Give me a minute.
Hey, do you think I should do this? You are doing it regardless.
Okay. I feel like I'm being bullied.
Also, I apologize to your editor about all the times I'm coughing. They got a lot of work on their hands to cut it out. I'm sorry.
Ginger likes his job. He really likes his job. I assure you, he loves his job. Ginger, don't kill me.
I'll cough more than for them.
But
I'm joking. I try not to.
So I've put the questions in an order that kind of works, starting with the simple and basic and working into the why did you bring that up to the that's kind of funny and I don't really know where to go with it. So we're gonna go over all these questions, and each of us are gonna have some answers for all of you, and we'll see how this goes. So are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. So I had to mute myself because I was coughing quite a bit.
I am sorry you have a cold.
It's
hope
fine.
your throat's okay. I mean,
I'll be
that's
fine.
the whole reason I didn't go, are you ready, kids? Because then, suddenly it's like I'm cueing you to sing, and that's not
Because
okay.
I start singing the Spunk SquarePants theme song.
So what started your interest in 40K?
Right. So when I was very young at school, I don't know what the American equivalent is. I think it's elementary school. It might be a little bit younger or older. I'm not sure.
Elementary school's the time period you're talking about, like grade 1 to 5?
Yeah, about that. Yeah. Even though I know the grading system's a bit different over here, but that's beside the point. But anyway, a kid came into class one day and he had like an old Citadel miniatures catalog. And this was back in the tail end of Rogue Trader, the very, very start of second edition. It was like, late 1992, early 1993, that kind of thing. God, I'm so old. But yeah, we just looked through all the models and all that, and we just thought they all looked really cool. Like, back when you had the brightly colored, green and yellow striking scorpions, for example, or when everything, had red guns. Yeah, do you remember that? But yeah, after a while, that kid ended up moving away, and I didn't see anything more Warhammer related, for a couple of years. And then one day, after coming back from visiting my grandparents, my dad and we stopped off at a supermarket on the way home. And in the magazine rack, there was an issue of White Dwarf, and it had some of the stuff on the cover, which I remembered from that Citadel Miniatures catalog. And I was like, oh, I need to get that. And that's basically how it started.
I was playing BattleTech and looked over and went, and it's a tabletop game store. And they carry more than one game. So I looked over and went, oh, another miniatures game. It can't possibly be that different. I was wrong. I was so very wrong. So I got introduced to 40K at the end of, I think, fourth. I know I played fifth. I know that I stopped playing at seventh and then picked back up at ninth. But
Yeah. Fourth,
God,
aka the best edition.
that's been a trip.
I can imagine.
Um, a trip I don't know if I regret yet. Don't make me. All right, now for the. These are going to be some dynamite questions to start. Could you tell? How did you start making YouTube content?
Okay, so I started doing YouTube full time, kind of out of necessity in a way. It's a bit weird. Because at the time I was working in a warehouse job and I ended up suffering a really, really bad back injury at that time. Um, Long story short, 3 discs in my back ended up being fucked, and I also ended up being diagnosed with abnormal bone growth in my coccyx. Fun times. It was initially, the funny thing was, it was misdiagnosed for close to 2 years, misdiagnosed as sciatica. Okay. And it was at a point where I could not walk. Like I literally I couldn't even stand up at times. But I ended up doing the YouTube stuff full time because I was bored sitting at home because I literally had nothing to do. Because I couldn't go to work because I was signed off work because of these quote unquote sciatica. And I ended up getting fired while I was signed off because at the time it was agency work, so they legally could. Bullshit, I know, but hey. So yeah, it just started from there basically.
Um, I had so at the time I was working as a person who played World of Tanks back when they had a professional league. And my daytime thing was I'm a grad student. My job is to, technically, I was an undergrad still, but my job was to, and I quote, study for school and write papers. And so I was playing World of Tanks and then thought, I'm tired of having to play with people who suck. So I thought maybe I could make a YouTube channel to help make people a little better. And then I stopped playing World of Tanks and just started making things that made me happy instead of just strictly video game stuff before I ran into Remleiz. And by then I was in graduate school and I went, hey, do you want to do science videos? Because I got an idea. Little did I know I had thrown a holy hand grenade of Antioch and did not realize the repercussions of my actions. Uh, what is your absolute favorite piece of 40K canon?
Ooh, that's a tough one because there's so many good things, but there's also so many stupid things. I'm gonna go for one that's because it's so stupid. Is that on one world in the Imperium, load-bearing walls are considered heretical.
What? Load bearing walls? So
yeah, this was mentioned in the novel Death of Antagonists. They were describing the architecture, how everything had buttresses and all that, and it says that the reason why everything's like that is because load-bearing walls were considered heretical.
so do they just support everything with columns?
I mean, it's 40K probably.
Oh, and for me, it's something equally dumb. There are so like for me, it's this giant grimdark universe where if it's horrific, it probably happens. But also, there's stuff like I swear the adjuncts who like keep notes and stuff. You see them walk around with like 500 scrolls on their back, and I'm sitting there and I'm staring at it and going, that man is walking around with a literal library, and he has no indexing method. How does he know which one of those to reach for? And yet, in every single time that it's shown in like Hammer and Bolter or it's been shown in a novel, they just immediately reach for the correct one and hand it to you, and I'm like, explain. And it's dumb and it's stupid, but having worked with librarians, I know it's dumb and it's stupid and it shouldn't work.
Sorry about that, my internet just dropped out briefly.
Okay.
So I didn't hear your answer at all, I'm afraid. Sorry.
That's okay. That's why we have two separate audio lines so we can fill in the blanks.
Yeah. Ginger, you might want to cut out the bit where I'm talking to a dead space like, hello.
What is your, what is an absolute pet peeve of canon for you?
Ooh, define pet peeve.
Something that you're just like, no, this should not exist.
Right. Yeah, my pet peeve is when they retcon The Exorcist into being a generic Imperial Fist successor chapter, as opposed to the fact that they were originally designed as like, oh, there's mystery about their origins, and then it was revealed in the Death Watch novels, Death Watch stories, that they're actually a Grey Knight successor chapter, and then there was an issue of White Dwarf saying, no, they're actually Imperial Fists. It's like, fuck you, that's the most boring answer ever. Like, not even, like, because they retcon most of the, really cool lore about them, and just said, no, they're just an Imperial Fist successor chapter that got their name after their first chapter master ended up exercising a demon that tried to possess him. It's like, that's boring as fuck. I'm sorry. Compared to, like, a chapter founded in secret by the Ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition designed to fight demons, that's more interesting, I find. Sorry.
My pet peeve with 40k canon stems from not having someone who is clearly in charge of the Black Library and what comes out of it. Because in the same year, you can get a novel like I Am Slaughter, which I want to throw into a burning trash can or hand to a comedian and say, here's your material.
It's funny you should say that about I Am Slaughter, considering that I posted this on Twitter the other day.
I bought that on Audible using my free monthly credit, and I want my credit back.
I think we'd all prefer to listen to a version of the book called I Am Laughter.
That would make more sense. And then
it's the Imperial Fist official joke book.
And then in the same year, you can get a sequel to Caiaphas Cain where he's teamed up with the Dark Angels. And I'm like, how can I get gold on one hand and monkey poop in the other, and you call it the same thing? And the monkey poop is more expensive.
I'm just going to say this is a hot take. The Caiaphas Cain stories are overrated. I'm sorry, that's a hot take.
It's not a hot take. They are overrated, but they're still good. That's the difference. Is it's like, yes, they are overrated and overhyped. But I think that stems from the concept of, I'm going to be entirely honest, the pet peeve extends past I Am Slaughter. Space Marine stories are boring.
A lot of them can be, yeah. I mean, some of them are actually really good. It depends on what chapter you get and what author you get. That's the important thing. Because some authors do some really, really good work, where some just... Like, so if you're stuck reading, like, Damnos by Nick Klein, for example, I feel sorry for you, because that book is one of the most boring books I've ever fucking read. It's really bad. I'm sorry, Nick. It is.
You're not sorry. But then own the opinion. It's bad, Nick. Do better.
But then you compare it to, say, Devastation of Baal. That's really good. It's one of the few really good books Guy Hates put out of late. That's another hot take, because I feel he's, his stuff's just becoming more nonsensical and just poorly researched. And the reason why I get so hard on him sometimes is because I know you can do better, because Dante was an amazing book. Devastation of Baal was a really good book. Perturabo was a really good book. And then you get stuff like, the Korax novel, which was boring. The Kurz novel, which was insulting in regards to how much it got wrong. I mean, because, Disharmonia, 40K's, most prominent Night Lord fan who's done, like, artwork for, like, every major Night Lord character and does all this amazing work. She read through the Kurz novel, and just making notes, she got 11 pages just in notes of everything that book got wrong.
And I just feel like, why does Games Workshop, a multi-billion-dollar company, a multi-billion-pound company, not have one person whose sole job it is to read through everything, send it back to the authors, and go, we need to change all of this because it's not correct. And then cite to the authors the citations for what would be where to find the correct information. Because it just feels stupid.
I mean, like having like a lore Bible or something.
Having a lore Bible and a Bible keeper. Come on.
I mean, I understand from the viewpoint that they want to instill some degree of flexibility with the writers, because having so many writers writing a single property, you're going to get some, inconsistencies. That's pretty much a given for the amount of writers you have. Excuse me. But I do feel there should be some key facts that should, remain concrete. The Horus heresy happened. The Emperor, defeated Horus. That kind of thing. The Emperor put on the Golden Throne. That should be concrete. It shouldn't be changed to oh, actually, it was actually Horus disguising himself as the Emperor who was put on the Golden Throne. That's stupid. Shut up. Kind of thing. But I can see both sides of the argument, but I do think with some authors, I feel like they should look to the past works and kind of try, and at the very least try to reconcile. If it's something that's goes against previously established canon, they should try and reconcile it together.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's something to say oh, this previous thing, that was propaganda or something.
I will give you an excellent example from another fandom of how stuff that was just weird that needed to be taken care of was dealt with. So the BattleTech cartoon series, which is awful. If you want to watch a joke, you can watch this.
Wasn't that actually made canon, but as in-universe propaganda?
Yes. So they took this terrible cartoon and say, what do we do with this? Oh, it's just propaganda by the Tharcad Broadcasting Corporation. Okay.
I love that idea. I absolutely love that idea.
And it works. And
That's brilliant. I love that idea.
To give another example of just stupidity, I was at a store yesterday playing an actual 40K game. That's what I did with my day. My friends have insisted I take a day off every week and go do something else. So I've been trying to go play tabletop games. And I put on the field these little these little griffins that a friend of mine printed. They're literally I'm just gonna say, they're literally My Little Pony griffin miniatures that work as Space Marines, because that's what they're made to be. I'm sending Remleiz the image now and putting it up on screen for everyone else. Remleiz is having technical difficulties for the moment. He can hear me. I can't hear him. But so we have these little griffin miniatures that a friend of mine printed. And someone tried to say oh, that wouldn't be in the 40K universe. And I'm like, you cannot tell me that they would not make a little propaganda cartoon for children in the 40K universe. You can't tell me that, because they would.
Right, can you hear me now?
I hear you now. What'd you do?
I rebooted Discord and I had to reboot Audacity. I saved the previous recording, so I apologize, Jinder. You're gonna have to do some cutting and pasting here. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I can make note. See, I have this thing where we have a separate channel that we talk in that I just leave notes for videos. Makes it really easy to do stuff. So I'm just gonna tell him. So technical difficulties between 18 and 22 minutes.
Yeah, just be warned. They're going to have to do a lot of cutting and pasting, I'm afraid. If my internet keeps dropping out, I might have to do it. So I'll try and save as much of it as possible.
It's okay.
Funnily enough, I actually had the same issue for the last episode of Adeptus Podcastus. Literally, my internet just died completely about an hour into the recording.
Mm-hmm.
Tack and Arena had to finish the entire show without me. It sucked.
So anyway, I got these from a friend. They 3D printed them. I have the actual miniature to use.
The Griffins are they? Yeah.
Yeah, they're these little
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah.
these little Griffin Marines, and they're fantastic. They look great. They came out great. The shoulder pads for GW parts fit on them just fine. They can hold chain swords. I've got one of them who actually has a steel chair as a weapon. They put an ultramarine.
And here I thought you weren't a wrestling fan.
And here and I put an ultramarine shoulder pad on him, so he could run up to people and say, "This is not Codex compliant," and then slam them with the steel chair. But someone tried to say, "Well, those wouldn't exist in the 40K universe," and I looked at them and I said, "You tell me to my face right now that they would not find an ancient show about ponies and decide to turn it into anti-Xeno propaganda for children."
My Little Pony, Xenos' heresy.
Exactly. So no, I think that
Actually, no, it's for like My Little Equine.
my little equine, and then it's just like a cartoon space marine riding a pony, and I'm like, that would be something they would do for children, and it would be awful. But yeah, so pet peeves with Canon, there are a lot.
Okay.
So next we have what is the best 40K video game you have ever played?
It's got to be Space Marine, isn't it?
For you, certainly.
Because it's something different other than the, like strategy game after strategy game after turn-based game after turn-based games. Just give us something different. And a third-person shooter, perfect.
Okay, I'm gonna say an opinion, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
It's not Storm of Vengeance, is it?
Dawn of War 2 is better than Dawn of War 1. Bite me.
No, I agree with you on that.
Because, like, I get some people want to do the base building thing. That's neat. I want to do the base building before I do the fighting. And then when the fighting starts, I don't want to ever have to worry about the base building ever again. I want to just put my army down and go. That's why I love XCOM. And to me, like, the new XCOM games, the Dawn of War games feel like kind of a prototype to those, and the way that they handle the two dynamics of I'm having the battle and I'm back at base. And that's just fun to me. And not to mention that, like, with Dawn of War 2, you had actual progression and changes to gameplay. Dawn of War 1, you just had, here's more missions. Here's the new campaign type. But they didn't change the core gameplay. And
I see where you're coming from, yeah.
I always felt like Dawn of War 1 had this big opportunity to change the core gameplay mechanics and make them better, and they never did. They just added more factions and made different campaigns, but they never actually got into the core, whereas Dawn of War 2 said, okay, so here's our core for the first game, and here's the standalone expansion, and it changes the core by having it where you can corrupt your Marines for more power or not, and also your decision is going to determine your ending. And then you got the Retribution, which changed the core mechanics further, so now you had your core set of Marines, and you could summon army units. Oh god, you actually found a picture. I'm gonna have to send Ginger all of these pictures. But I've got one to counter you. This is my Death Watch group that I run. They have actual Marine pictures, but this is the Death Watch team.
Oh, bless you.
But they do have actual, like, Marine pictures, and they're great. But a lot of people look at me and go, "Wait, you run Death Watch?" I'm like, "Yes." I write entire adventures and post them when we finish the adventure, So like I literally hand modules out to the 40K tabletop community on Reddit. I'm just like, here's a module. Here's everything you need to run it. Maps and tokens and unit profiles, everything. Go ham. So the next question, what is the worst 40K video game you've
From
ever
a
played?
Vengeance.
Storm of Vengeance.
The fucking lane, mobile phone lane, stupid thing. Oh god, yeah, that was bad.
Some people are going to be irritated with me, and I know they are. The worst one I've ever played? Fire Warrior. Like, Storm of Vengeance is bad, but it's no longer available on Steam. You can't get it.
Wait, is it not?
It does not have a store page anymore, and you can only
Oh,
play
it's been
it.
unlisted.
Yeah, it's been completely delisted. Their license was revoked and everything.
That actually happened with the Legacy of Dawn game as well. That got unlisted as well.
But Fire Warrior was the worst 40K experience I ever had, because alongside it I had Space Marine, and I'm like, okay, both of these are kind of shooter games. Fire Warrior had this weird pseudo aiming mechanic where it was like Doom, but also control of where you aim at the same time. So it had like a weird half auto aim.
It did, mainly because it was designed primarily as a console game, so you kind of need that compensation with a controller because you don't get the more
Like-
accurate aiming with like mouse and keyboard and all that.
Like at the time, yeah, you might have needed that compensation with the controller, but
Because remember, this was like back in 2003 when it came out.
yeah, it was back before you had dual joysticks.
It was
yeah.
after that actually, but I think because when did because the dual joystick thing was first pioneered by Alien Resurrection on the PS1, and I remember that specifically because things like IGN did a review of that game and said that control scheme, which is like the standard for modern console shooters, and they said it was the worst console control system they've ever experienced, and it will never catch on. Remember, kids, you can't spell ignorant about IGN.
But I agree. Like no, that was a good control scheme, but they didn't use it. It had already been shown that it worked. And I was just like, and then the worst part of it to me was looking through the game files. And I did this for the review I did for you, and people still roasted me for doing the review, and I'm like, no, this game is terrible. The las gun that the guardsmen use has a base 6 damage. The Tal pulse rifle the game has you play with at the start of every mission has a base damage of 4. In the game code, the pulse rifle is the worst weapon in the game.
I think the reason why so many people are defensive about Fire Warrior, for a lot of them, it's probably because of nostalgia.
Yeah,
because when you look about things with rose-tinted glasses, you're more willing to overlook the flaws.
But like lore-wise, it's highly lore unfriendly. The first boss you fight, you're a Fire Warrior versus an Imperial Guard Valkyrie in a one-on-one fight. And the Valkyrie pilot has...
You're fighting a Lord of Change by yourself.
Yeah, it's just like, no. Just no. Lore-wise, it's atrocious. And then non-lore-wise,
silly question.
Yes?
Silly question. Have you read a tie-in novel for that game?
No, I have not read the tie-in novel for that game. The game turned me off so much that anything...
I will say this. I will say for you to read it purely on the basis that the author of the novel is Simon Spurrier, who is one of the best writers that Black Library has ever had.
That might have something to do with it. But
basically, they gave him chicken shit and he turned into chicken salad.
Yeah, that might have something to do with it, is the fact the novel's good. Novel, probably good. I haven't read it. I can't say for myself. Remleiz says it's good. But the game was a train wreck. Playing through sections where it's like, you're in a crisis suit, and snipers are shooting me that I can't shoot back at. Because you can't see them yet because they're beyond your render distance, and you're just getting hit over and over again. Or having a Tal Fire Warrior in melee range with a Khorne Berserker, and you win.
I mean, if it works for Alan Shee. Because remember, Alan Shee was an ethereal who bisected an orc war boss in half with a stick.
Yeah, I know.
So, if he can do it. Because in Fiaura, you're basically playing as the Tal's equivalent of Doom guy.
Yeah, exactly. You're the Tal equivalent of Doom guy, but the game makes it out where you're just a regular fire warrior. They don't even promote you. You go through all of that, and at the end, somewhere. You go through that, and all at the end, you're still Shas Ray, and I'm like, are you kidding? I don't even get promoted?
Well, no, because you disobeyed direct order at points, so.
But for the greater good, right?
Yes, you did well, but you also disobeyed an order. So that's why we're not promoting you, but that's also why we're not punishing you. So they cancel each other out, so you're back to square one. It's like, well, he just didn't get, excommunicated or whatever the term is. But anyway.
What is your favorite 40k faction and why is it orcs?
I think I've dropped out again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, thank fuck. What was the question?
What is your favorite 40k faction and why is it orcs?
Well, my favorite 40k faction is actually the Night Lords.
That's not very orky, but continue.
Again, it's mainly due to nostalgia, because when I first got into Warhammer, Night Lords were basically like the poster boys of Chaos Space Marines back around 1996, 1997. They were the poster boys of Chaos Space Marines before they started shifting over towards the Black Legion. But yeah, I just like the color scheme. I like the fact that, wing skull, lightning bolts. It's just cool.
So, my favorite faction is also one of my greatest irritations with Games Workshop. But it's not the absolute greatest. I started playing with orcs. That's fair. That's fair. My first 40k army was orcs. There. Everybody knows that now. And I did have the absolute honor and privilege of having myself stomped into the ground so there was an event that took place, I think in 2008 or 2009, where Robin Williams showed up out of nowhere to the Games Workshop bunker to play in a national tournament, and I was there playing. And I couldn't fight him properly because he kept making me laugh because he was playing orcs.
That's awesome.
And Games Workshop didn't pay him to be there. No, he just showed up.
He did have a massive Eldar army, from what I recall.
He had a massive Eldar army, but what he'd done was he went out and he hired 6 people to quickly paint him up an orc army and showed up barely knowing the rules for orcs and just played them.
That's awesome.
He won 2 of his 6 games. One of his wins was me. But anyway. But I did start playing orcs, but my actual favorite faction is Blood Ravens. Because that's when I went from, okay, I play this as a side game to Battletech to I play 40k and I play 40k hard was because Dawn of War 1 came out and I loved it. And then all the Blood Ravens novels suck.
All 4 of them.
And then we have, and we also had Dawn of War 3, and...
No, we don't talk about Dawn of War 3.
So, I want to point this out. I reviewed Dawn of War 3 and told people, do not buy this game. It is awful. And people hated me for it. And people hated on me for it. That video...
But it was awful.
That original review still has a negative likes to dislike ratio. But I did a follow-up video called Dawn of War 3 Why It Failed. And it was one of the best videos, and it was one of the most popular videos I've ever done.
Oh, the duality of man.
And I'm like, guys, you can't have it both ways. You can't review bomb my actual review.
I mean,
and then turn around and like the follow-up that's like, this game sucked and here's why.
Fiaura, it's the internet. double negatives are always a thing on the internet.
I know. I know. It's just
The internet is populated by people saying we hate this, and we also hate people who say they hate it.
Yeah, no.
How do you think so many people got popular just by being negative towards everything on the internet?
I know, and it irritates me to no end. It's one of the reasons why, like, I try really hard to find the positives and stick with them. Yes, I do brutally honest reviews, but you want to know what's weird? Most of my brutally honest reviews, I recommend the game. I have a bunch of stuff I'd like the developers to fix, but I recommend the game in. I have the math here on the side just for like record keeping over the years. 64% of my 2/3 of my brutally honest reviews, 64% are I recommend the game. Come on, I don't like just finding the negative. Like, it feels like if you start doing negative content, if you start doing stuff to where you complain about stuff constantly, you're stuck there.
Yeah.
Because your audience becomes based on outrage. And
it gets tiring after a while.
Not only does it get tiring, I just don't see how people can be proud of themselves when the only thing they do is spur negativity. I fired an editor because of the way they edited my books, not because they were wrong, but because the language they used felt like they were trying to be condescending constantly. And when we tried to fix it, they got defensive. So I just said, all right, well, I'll find a new editor. And I'm glad I did. And I hope that person has found, like, something they can do that brings joy to their life instead of just constantly putting another person down.
Yeah.
But yeah, my favorite faction is Blood Ravens. I like the idea of having a chapter who doesn't know its origins. That's their kind of key thing. And I like the idea of having a chapter that has to adapt. Because if you remember, originally the Blood Ravens had a recruiting world, and now they're a fleet-based chapter. Because their recruiting world's exploded. Or was bombed into oblivion by the Inquisition.
It was something like that. It's been a while since I played Dawn of War 2, so I can't.
Yeah, they lost Typhon to the Inquisition, and then they lost Calderas to the Orc hordes, and they were just like, all right, we're fleet based now, and that's a cool concept to me because there's very few Space Marine chapters that survive everything that they went through, and more importantly, they didn't do it Mary Sue style. They made it where it felt like if you fail this, we all die. It's that simple. And that's amazing. And it's not Ultramarines picking up a Necron pylon and beating a monolith to death.
I just reminded me, do you remember from one of the Siege of Terror novels when Jagatai Khan literally just grabbed a Leviathan dreadnought by the head, which weighs 30 tons, by the way, and just yeeted it over the battlefield, one-handed?
Mm-hmm.
That was brilliant. I love that because it was hilarious. Especially when they pointed out, like, everyone just stopped to watch it sail overhead for a brief moment. It's like, oh, there goes a dreadnought.
So one of the recent Indominus novels, before they corrected it where Gilliman could get out of his armor, he's doing paperwork because Gilliman's superpower is management. So he's doing paperwork, and then he can't get the papers properly, and they go scattering everywhere. And he then makes this
story. Yeah,
he makes this loud complaint about it, and Kato Sicarius looks over and goes, "My lord, are you crusading against bureaucracy?"
I am the bureaucracy.
I am the bureaucracy, and in this moment, it is the most confounding thing in the world. I can command legions of fleets to decimate whole worlds, and yet, right now, I can't even get to command this piece of paper to stay on the desk.
Do you want to hear something even funnier?
Go ahead.
Do you remember the time Ferrus Manus caught a last cannon beam and crushed it? In his bare hands?
And I'm like, how do you crush Light.
Magical living metal hands. That's why.
If you could make...
Funny enough, we actually had David Geimer on podcast, and we actually asked him about that. So what made you decide to have Ferris Man crush a lass, cannon blast in his bare hands? And his response was, I just thought it was cool. I was like, fair enough, can't argue with that.
I mean, I want to, but I can't.
At least he was honest enough to say, like, yeah, I just did it because it was cool. No other reason.
If you could make content for any other IP, what would it be?
My Patreon supporters already know what I'm going to be doing, but aside from that, I'm going to keep it close to my chest for now.
Okay. I already make content for other IPs. I stopped really making content for 40K because just the level of negativity was just getting to me. So I went on, and then I had like 3 other fandoms who had people coming to me begging me to make stuff. So I went and made that stuff, and then I got nothing but positive reinforcement from that.
You should totally do some Kane stuff.
I should do what?
Legacy of Kane.
I've never even played Legacy of Kane.
You've never played Legacy of Kane?
No.
Oh my god.
I hadn't played Pokemon until a year ago.
We need to rectify this. We need to rectify this. You need to go and... I'm pretty sure you can get it on Steam. You need to go and get a hold of a copy of Soul Reaver and play that.
I'm interviewing him, but he's asking all the questions now. No, I lived in a ultra-conservative Christian household, and I was allowed to go play BattleTech because it's a tabletop store. It's not them demon video games. They never looked into the tabletop games I was playing. But no.
God forbid, if you start on 40k, it's like, oh, what are you playing with? Oh, I'm just playing Chaos Demons.
I was like, oh, I'm just playing orcs, and they're like, okay, that's fine, because orcs are fantasy creatures. They're not. I didn't tell them I was playing against demons, but anyway, no, I wasn't allowed to. So like, me and my little brother, when Pokemon first came out, and you had the trading card game, we went and bought cards. I worked as an understudy at an auction house. I made $150 every 2 weeks. All I had to do was help move stuff, and when the guy was up there taking calling out numbers like 5, 10, 50, that kind of thing, where he's like calling the amount of money, I would just sit there and just point at a person in the audience when they raise their hand and yell "yep" really loud, so that
was it an auctioneer, was it?
Yeah, I was just taking bids. I was just looking through the crowd, taking bids as people raised their numbers, so the auctioneer would know that we had a bid. And would keep pointing out the highest bid in the audience. That was my job, was just point out the highest bid and help move stuff. And then as I got older, I got to move bigger and bigger stuff, and eventually got to do paperwork, and then became an auctioneer's apprentice until I joined the army. But the point here is this: I used that money to buy Pokemon cards. And then my parents found out I bought Pokemon cards, made me take them outside and burn them.
Jesus.
So, like, we weren't allowed Pokemon. We weren't allowed... Digimon was okay because it's a video game. Digimon was really messed up. Pokemon's wholesome.
I mean, Digimon's fine, ignore the fact that you got things like, Devimon and all that, but, that's fine.
They restricted everything. People, like, video games were highly, highly restricted. So no, I didn't get to play Legacy of Kain. I didn't get to play Resident Evil. I didn't get to play, I didn't play Final Fantasy because I didn't like it. I didn't get to play a bunch of stuff. Unless I was in an environment where they had no control. So, like, they dropped me off at the Boys and Girls Club, where the Boys and Girls Club has a video game room with Nintendo's NES, SNES, Sega Genesis. We got Saturns and N64s. I can't believe I actually knew a place where you had Sega Saturns, plural. Um,
I've got Saturns, plural.
when the PlayStation came out, they got those. And I got to play a bunch of stuff there, but the important thing there was the game could not be rated M. And some of the T-rated games were also not put into the general playroom. They were only put into the to the older kids' playroom. I got to play a bunch of stuff. That was where I got to play GoldenEye because it was rated T. That was funny to me, by the way.
Twisted Metal.
Yeah, no, I didn't get to play Legacy. I didn't get to play a bunch of stuff. Twisted Metal. That was one of my little brother's favorite series. But as soon as our parents found out what it was, nope, took it away.
Yeah, I can imagine they weren't too happy with the idea of Sweet Tooth the Clown, or Minion, the literal demon from hell in his APC.
Or Reaper, the Grim Reaper.
Oh, Mr. Grimm.
Yeah, Mr. Grimm, the Grim Reaper on the motorcycle. Or the fact that the monster truck guys just wanted tires after they murdered 10 people.
Yes.
Or the running over of people in a car. No, they were not happy at all. And then they weren't happy with what was it? They weren't happy with the Warhammer Fantasy game, Dark Omen, until I told them this was just the video game of the tabletop games I've been playing for years. And then they relented on it. And then I got Shadow of the Horned Rat and just smiled. Terrible video games, by the way.
I missed that game.
Absolutely, like mechanically awful.
It has its charm with its cutscenes, though.
It has its charm with its cutscene. And the mechanically awful part, it's mechanically awful from 2 points of view. One, it's mechanically awful from the actual management system of your mercenary company. And 2, it's mechanically awful because they know that these battles are going to take a while. Because there's a lot of just sitting there waiting for units to get through a melee. So they gave you a button that the instruction book and the game tutorial tells you, push this button to pump up your unit. There's even a gauge in Dark Omen for how pumped up the unit is, so you push the button to fill the gauge and it depletes when you're not pushing the button. The button does nothing.
Oh, God.
It actually does nothing. It is strictly there to give the players something to do while they're waiting for the melee to resolve so you can move
jangle your
troops.
Keys. It's the key jangle button.
So I make right now, I make content for Pokemon. I have a Pokemon video coming out after my highlight reel for April, and then I have another one coming out behind that. I get invited to My Little Pony conventions, and they pay all the expenses. I'm a tiny content creator. They put me on a plane first class from Virginia to Seattle. It was the first time I flew first class. It was weird. And I make content that people just ask me to make. I did a whole video on, can we build a Battletech battle mech? Because somebody wanted to know. So yeah, no, I make content for all sorts of other IPs. It's fun. And hey, Remleiz, you can have multiple interests. I would not put it past you to have a secondary lore channel that's just Legacy of Cade for like a year just for funsies.
Again, I'm keeping my cards close to my chest in this regard, but Patreon supporters already know what's going on, so.
Do you have a favorite 40k fandom creation or video?
I mean, it's probably going to be either Alpha Busa's TTS or Sniper Whip's Codex Compliance series.
That's fair. I miss TTS.
Me too.
Angry Marines.
I miss TTS mainly because it was something like especially in the later years that I was involved in, not just as in a voice acting capacity, but also in a consultant capacity. Because the episode, the one where went to the world of Jopal, the Jopal indentured.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my idea because Alpha came to me and said, "Hey, do you know any of weird or obscure planets?" Like, oh yeah, there's a world of Jopal where everyone's literally born to debt. And it's like, oh, that's perfect. Everyone looks like they're wearing pajamas as well. That's the Canon uniform as well, by the way.
Yeah, no, that was great.
And also, I take great pride in the fact that in the Lamenter special, you know that scene where the Lamenter's having the shit kicked out of him by the Minotaurs?
Yeah.
The script originally called for the Minotaurs to be shouting obscenities, but then I suggested to Alpha, hey, they're Minotaurs, which are cows, let's have them make angry cow noises. That'd be funnier. And he did, so.
I love that series. I have to agree with a friend of mine, though. It was much more entertaining up until about episode 23 or 24, where they, instead of focusing on their own subplot, which was, it wasn't a bad subplot, it was actually good. They should have just kept also just having at least half the episode just be dedicated to, here's something absurd, let's talk about it, because that's what the entire series was based on. So it doesn't hold the same charm for me as they get to the later episodes where it's an entire episode focusing on their own plot line. I get why they did it, and I understand that, but
I will say this because I was involved in the creative process, but so I can't go into too much detail. But we had a lot planned out. They say a bunch of whole interconnecting plot lines, and some of the ones that we were forced to abandon, because when Games Workshop changed their policies and all that in regards to fandom and fan create content stuff like that. It's a shame because some of these plot lines that we came up with were genuine gut busters. Because we were just sitting like in a big Discord called spitballing ideas and stuff like that. We had a big document detailing like plot lines. We actually had scripts for several dozen episodes after this. And it's a shame that we didn't get to use them because these would have been so perfect. I think Alpha's main regret, though, in regards to TTS, was introducing the orc plot too early. Because I think it was like in one of the early episodes they introduced Gazgol and Blacktooth, and that was never touched upon again.
Yeah.
So I think that's Alpha. Obviously I can't speak for Alpha in this regard because I don't know what's going through his mind. But I'm pretty sure that was one of his biggest regrets in that regard.
So, besides 40K, would you openly admit to loving any other fandoms?
Does pro wrestling count?
Yes.
Then yes.
Okay, you brought this up earlier. You're like, you don't watch pro. And I didn't take you for a pro wrestling fan. I'm not. I just find it funny that every time something major happens in pro wrestling, it's always someone running out with a steel chair. No,
I need to show you the Sami Callihan Kenny Omega match then, where instead of it being a chair, how about pizza cutters or thumbtacks or a fork?
But I did actual wrestling in high school, like Greco-Roman Olympic wrestling, so I can't watch pro wrestling and think anything of it other than this is comedy, and I should take it entirely as comedy.
I mean, you can always watch some Kurt Angle matches because he was an Olympic gold medalist.
And then the other problem I have with it was that ultra-right conservative stepmom of mine, that was her favorite thing. And it just became...
Yeah, I can understand why that would sour your view on it, fair enough.
And it just became the one thing where I was like, I do not want anything to do with this or to watch this. I'm just going to go to my room and read a book.
Fair enough.
If you could cross over anything with 40K, what would it be?
Crossover anything with 40K? Mm-hmm. Do you know what? For shits and giggles, how about Transformers?
You know what? It's the right scale, too, because they have a whole planet that's a Transformer. Just imagine an Imperial fleet looking up and going, so you know how we exterminated a planet, but the planet's still there? Yeah, we got another problem.
It's the Decepticons.
We have to kill the whole planet.
Like, just imagine, a Bane blade that transforms into Megatron. That'd be awesome.
I would take Galvatron for a Shadow Storm or the one with the volcano cannon. think that is a storm.
I'm pretty sure that's a Shadow Sword, yeah.
Yeah, the Shadow Sword. Yeah, I would take him for a Shadow Sword just coming up and transforming into a Volcano Kid, and you're like, this is not going to end well, is it?
And you get an entire Hive City transforms into Triptychon.
If I could cross over anything with 40k, I think I would take Necromunda and Twisted Metal, like the whole concept
that'd
of
be
Twisted
awesome.
Metal, and turn
Yes.
it into a 40k thing where they have like a giant 12 or 20 kilometer arena that the vehicles fight in, but also if the vehicles are destroyed and the driver doesn't want to give up yet, they can get out and fight on foot. So then you have like these epic moments where it's something like, we created a whole new machine heresy, and I'm like, oh god, no.
I mean, if you can take, Mad Max and add orcs to it to create Gorka Morka.
Exactly. Or have...
I could see Necromunda Twisted Metal working. Yeah, okay. I like the idea.
And then for the absolute best comedy gold part of it, it has one of the announcers and match callers has to be a tech priest just sitting there explaining the levels of tech heresy that is being committed in front of them.
Oh god, what are you doing to that poor vehicle?
Now, if you were to have someone who you wanted to play 40k with you, what is the first thing you would recommend to them to watch? And what is something you would tell them up front to brace themselves? He's having to think, or he had an internet disconnection, and I don't know which. Uh-oh.
Right, can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Right. Sorry, Ginger. At least you're earning your paycheck.
I wish I could pay him more. Help me pay Ginger more. Anyway.
Yeah, help pay Ginger more. Please donate to the link down below. I'm sure Fiaura will put something down there.
Hey! I'll also put a link to 40.
Patreon, there you go.
Yeah, I'll put a link to Patreon. We need 50 patrons. Then I have to do an awful video that I'm not prepared for. We're one patron short right now.
What video is this?
I agreed to do a Pokemon Pass or Smash video for all of them.
Oh, there you go. You got to do it. You got to join now. I mean, if it's good enough for Markiplier,
And to do it exactly like Markiplier, no context, no explanation, picture pops up, pass, smash. Anyway, so as I was asking, if you had to recommend something for newcomers to watch, what would it be? And what
my
would you
newcomer series.
You have one?
I have a series for newcomers. Yes, I've been working on it for several years.
Yay! Self-recognition! He actually finally validated himself. Oh, crap.
I literally put a newcomers video about heretics out the other week.
I would recommend you watch that series first and go watch a couple of videos by Luton9. And I would also recommend, and how would you recommend they brace themselves?
Make sure you have plenty of time because there's a lot to learn.
I would recommend.
Oh, and I'll also say this: avoid the 40k wiki because that place gets shit wrong all the time and just makes shit up as well.
Yeah, I would definitely avoid the 40k wiki.
Lexicanum, however, is much better because they actually try to cite their sources, but even that's not perfect, but it's still better than the wiki.
When we were doing stuff together, people tried to cite stuff to me on the wiki as a way of being able to say, haha, as a way of saying, haha, I got you. And I'm like, here's what the wiki says. Here's 5 sources that say the wiki's wrong, and all 5 of them say the wiki's wrong in the same way. Moving on.
Yeah.
But I would recommend you brace yourself because 40k, in a way that 40k is the absolute worst humanity at its absolute worst, with the absolute worst it has to offer.
Mm.
I mean that in every way, shape, and form. If you can think of something crazy or depraved or wrong, it probably exists in the universe.
And stay away from the Ian Watson novels, if you know what's good for you.
Oh, do not go near those. If you find an Ian Watson novel, it is the one time I will tell you it's okay to do a book burning. It's okay.
Who
Just
knows,
one
Ian? This will be
time.
my next movie.
But
The fact
yeah,
that Stanley Kubrick wants to make a movie adaptation of Space Marine, no fucking hell.
and not to go super high end off the rails, but 40K is the Imperium is awful. It is built on the idea of everyone has to have faith in the same person, and that person is your de facto dictator, and your life sucks, and you're gonna be a menial laborer for the rest of your life, and you're basically 99% of the population is either an indentured servant or a slave, effectively. It is the worst humanity has to offer, period.
I mean, it literally says on the inside of the rule book, the galaxy is a big place, and whatever happens, you will not be missed. It literally
so,
says it on the first page of every rule book.
so just brace yourself and accept that.
Yeah.
We're playing in this universe and we're doing content for this universe because we enjoy looking at the darkness, looking into the
Also,
void.
also, don't take it super seriously because sometimes it goes so grim dark that it ends up being full grim derp. So bear that in mind as well.
Can I tell an aside story about from a game store in Alabama?
Sure.
So we were playing a 40K tournament, and this person comes in and starts screaming that we're all fascists. And myself and a friend stop them. And we explain, no, no one in here actually wants anything in this universe to exist. Because if it does, the methods for its existence are unethical and unmoral in every way, shape, and form. We don't play in this universe because we want this. We play in this universe because we seek to understand the void that stares at us. So instead of looking away from it, we look back and go, how do we avoid falling into you altogether? And that was the gist of everything we told them. And at the end of the day, they were still mad at us. They still tried to go from table to table and insult us until the manager told them they had to leave. But the point is this: we are playing in a universe where everything is awful, and we know it is.
Yeah, because what a lot of people seem to forget about 40K is how it was conceived. And it was initially conceived as a parody of Thatcherite politics.
Yeah.
That may not mean much to those outside of the UK. Because here in the UK, Margaret Thatcher was a prime minister who was very, depending on your viewpoint, she was either, oh, she was great for standing against the unions, or she was an absolute horrible piece of shit. There is no middle ground between people's viewpoints. But when she was in charge, arguably, things were very, very bad, very dystopian, very 1984. Ironically enough, this was around 1984. But because it was a very hardline conservative government at the time, from what I can recall. I'm not an expert on politics. It's been a long time since I had to do anything Thatcherite related, but basically people who grew up in Thatcher's Britain around that time have a very, very strong dislike of her. And Warhammer 40K was basically designed as a parody of, Thatcherite Britain at the time, essentially. So
And to me that makes sense. So we're playing this universe to understand it in the same way that a person who has a phobia of something will have an unnaturally large amount of information about the thing they're scared of. 40K as a universe, if it were to exist, terrifies me. and recognizing not necessarily the steps to get there, but the steps that could be parodied onto our own world makes more sense to me. Like, it's why I have a phobia of sharks. I also have an unnatural, huge encyclopedia of knowledge about them. And despite that knowledge, I still feel a chill down my spine when I see a shark video pop up in my feed. And I almost feel compelled to watch just so I can learn a little more and try to overcome the fear by exposure therapy, which has not helped
Well,
at all.
exactly, yeah. I mean,
So,
it's understandable because, like, I mean, according to some of the not in the movies, whatever it is, what's Batman's biggest fear? Bats. He dressed up as a bat because that is what he fears, and basically he channels that fear into himself to become the Knight, essentially.
yeah, exactly. And so, like, to me,
So if it works for Batman, it work for anyone.
so to me, like, 40K is everything I don't want. Space Marines are cool, but the process of making them, it would be considered highly unethical. I mean, they're recruited at what, as young as age 8?
Yeah.
You can't take an 8-year-old and turn them into a soldier and it be an ethical process at all. And you can't. And the other thing with like Space Marine recruitment and to some degree Imperial Guard recruitment, if I understand it correctly, once it's offered, it's basically forced. Like you can't. I have never read a novel where someone said no and got to and got to not have to serve in the Imperial military or get turned into a servitor.
From what I can recall, joining a PDF is voluntary, but if you're in the Guard, you're basically drafted.
And you're drafted for a ridiculous amount of time or for life.
I mean, for a lot of regiments, it is for life. Basically, you will keep fighting until you die. But because there was actually a really good novel called 15 Hours, and it mentioned how this teenage kid who's basically been drafted into the Guard, and it mentions how his dad used to be in the Guard, but after a campaign, basically as a way to help raise morale, the commanders of the regiment basically said, okay, we're going to run a competition and one person will get to go home. And this person's dad basically was the one who won the competition. But then you later find out that, no, actually, he didn't win the competition. He killed the guy who did win and just stole the paperwork and fled.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact, the reason the book's called 15 Hours is because 15 hours is the average lifespan of a newly conscripted guardsman.
And I'm like, I don't know anyone who could, like, I get the Imperium is huge and the scale is insane, but I don't know anyone that could maintain an army when that without knowing that it's going to fall apart if your average trooper only lives 16 hours. You're gonna put so an average Imperial Guardsman has what? A year of training?
If that.
Um
It depends on how desperately they're needed for a nearby war zone. Because some cases, it could just be a couple of months.
Yeah. But even then, you're still putting months of training into someone whose average lifespan is 15 hours?
Yep.
That's not gonna work very well because it took 20 years to grow the person.
Yeah, but human lives are expendable. That's the bit just to 40K. Everything is expendable.
That's true. Everything is expendable, but you can't throw anything away.
Oh, I'm also reminded from one of the Warhammer horror novels. It opens up with this details of this agri world, and basically, like, they've been chosen to send food off to the Greater Imperium to feed the Emperor's armies. So what they do is like, okay, we're going to send the finest cuts of meat, the freshest fish, the ripest fruits and vegetables, basically all the highest quality grains, all this really, really good shit because the Emperor's armies need this food. And it gets shipped away, and as soon as the Mechanicus get hold of it, it literally gets turned into a flavorless sludge.
Yeah.
It's like, those poor guardsmen could have had a nice steak, something, fish and chips or something.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, grain nutrient paste for everyone.
And I'm just like, why?
because the AdMech think flavor is, it's unnecessary. It's like, no, you don't need flavor, you just need nutrients. Doesn't matter how it tastes.
So yeah, we admit we play in the universe where everything sucks. And
I mean, do you remember Necromunda, where they literally eat protein bars made of dead people?
I think
where do you think it's from? It's in the name.
I think Gilliman said it best. I have woken up to a rotting corpse of what my father wanted.
Better to have burned in the fires of Horus's ambition than live to see this.
Yeah, exactly. And like,
correct quote, but
better to have burned in the fires of Horus's ambition. Yeah, he woke up to what he would consider hell.
Yeah,
and then has to step back and go, no, this is real life.
Or is this just fantasy?
And I'm like, no, you're fine. Do not apologize. It's okay. But I'm like, yeah, no, he's right. He woke up to what he considers hell, and it's real life, and he has to deal with it. I also think that, and I hate to say this because I hate Ultramarines, Gilliman was definitely the right choice for First Primarch to bring back, because he's going to be the one who's the most level-headed to start with, and he's going to be the one who's going to be the most mature and deal with it.
It's not only that as well. He was the only one where anyone knew where the fuck he was. He was sitting in the throne on McCrag in a stasis field. No one knew where the other Primarchs were. I mean, granted, we as the audience knew where Lionel Johnson was. We knew where he was, but no one in universe did.
Yeah, and we have an idea of where I wanted to say Genghis Khan, and I know that's not right.
For a minute, I thought you were going to say Gangrel. I was like, hang on.
No, we know
Jagatai.
We know where Jagatai is. Or we have an idea of where he is, but no one wants to outright say it. He's driving up.
Jagatai's in the Webway. Russ and Korax are in the Eye of Terror somewhere. Rogel Dawn's dead. He is dead. We have a lot of evidence for this, and I've pointed this out several times. Vulcan's dead. I'm sorry, he is. Sanguinius is dead. Ferrus Manus is dead.
Okay.
Gilliman and Lina running around going, hello.
See, and I know and understand Sanguinius and Ferrus. They died in the heresy. It happened. And then I turn around and I look over and I go, I really want Vulcan to not be dead. Please, just not dead Vulcan. Come on, he was the nice man. He deserves to live. Please give me this one.
He was the nice man. Do you remember when he set a child on fire?
Yes. And he's still the nice one. He set a child on fire. I'm still the nice guy. That's kind of sad.
It says a lot about the Imperium when the guy who literally sets a kid on fire is considered the nice one.
Yeah.
Oh god, I just remembered. It's a novel called Firecast, which, despite the name, is actually more about an Imperial Guard regiment. But there's a flashback scene where they're attacked by possessed villagers or whatever, and the guardsman literally picks up a little girl and throws her out a window head first. Defenestration. I laughed so hard upon reading this thing because he was attacked by this little girl biting her, and he just threw the child out a second floor window.
But to me, and I want to see this, I would happily see Histon die if it meant Vulcan got to come back. I have in my head somewhere that they get the last artifact. They're being swarmed by some Xenos threat of some sort. He sends the team with the artifact to run away, and he pulls out, and he goes to fire his flamethrower. It won't fire because it's damaged. He yanks the tank off of it, puts the bolt pistol to it, stomps on it with his foot, and screams, "Vulcan lives!" as he emoliates himself and whatever aliens were trying to chase away the people with the last artifact. And the book, and a book in this case, would end with a hand coming out of the volcano, pulling himself up and going,
"Where?" Hello.
And Vulcan going, "Where am I?" And it just ends the
I'm also,
novel. No further explanation. Vulcan just comes out and goes, "Where am I?"
do you know what the funny thing was? When Vulcan turned up in the Beast Arises series,
What?
and then he's standing on the bridge of this Imperial fish ship. That's like, it was Slaughter's ship. And Lord Vulcan, some of your sons are here and they wish for you to meet with them. And Vulcan basically told him to fuck off.
That was
So,
great.
no, I'm not meeting with my kids. Fuck off.
I'm not meeting with my kids.
Wow.
And then later,
Wow, Vulcan, such a
the
good dad.
Inquisitors are chasing him around, trying to make him regent, and he's like, "I got something to do. See you in a minute." And then he just leaves.
And then he gets blown up in the end.
And I can just imagine that entire inquisitorial team going, "Well, shit."
It's like, hooray, a Primarch's back. No, he just got blown up in a nuke. Never mind.
We don't talk about why Earth has 2 moons.
We don't talk about why that second moon is smiling at everyone.
All right.
I don't know if you want to breeze through these, because I'm going to have to go in about 25 minutes.
We're not going to get to all these questions. I knew we wouldn't get to all these questions. All right. Pick one.
Pick one.
We're down to
Okay, if you had to live anywhere in the 40k universe, what faction would you be? What job would you want? If I had to live anywhere in the 40k universe, to be honest, it would probably be somewhere in Ultramar, because that's probably one of the nicest areas in 40k to genuinely live. But if I had to pick an occupation, Inquisition, or failing that, Rogue Trader, because you have a lot more freedom. You actually have rights.
So, as much as I absolutely despise Eldar fanboys in every way, shape, and form, I would want to live on a craft world, and my job would strictly be Soulstone Keeper. All I do all day is go through the archive, put the new stones in, and then talk to them and hear their stories. That's it. That would be my entire.
So kind of like a spirit seer in a way.
Kind of like a spirit. Like, I know they exist. I know there's the Soulstone Keeper, and they have to go through the archive and talk to all the Soulstones to keep them company, so they don't go crazy or lose their memories like a dreadnought. Because that's
Morning, Dave. Morning.
It's an actual thing. I remember reading it in a novel while we were doing the work together and being like, that sounds like an amazing job. You're basically a librarian, but the book talks back. And I remember reading about that when we were doing work together several years ago, and it stuck with me ever since. And so if I had to be, if any faction, I'd want to be an Eldar whose job it is just the Soulstone Archivist. That's my job.
Yeah.
I'm the and I know I'm a doomed race. I know that at the end everything will be over and my soul will be eaten by Slaanesh and it will be as though I never existed. That's the ultimate fate. But having written 3 books now and working on a 4th, I can say unequivocally, working on a 4th that's a new novel series, I can say unequivocally, I know what my endings are. To me, the writer, it's everything in between that I don't know. I don't know how I got... When I write a book, I always write the ending first, and then write the beginning. And now I don't know anything in the middle. I don't know how I got from the beginning to the end. And that's the part of making a book that's fun to me. So being able to have a book and it talks back, and it's not just a one-way conversation, oh boy, I could do that for a few millennia and be happy.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough, yeah.
And that is a good question to end on. You picked.
Yeah, I apologize for having the internet cutting out constantly. I think my router's going, so.
It's okay. It's okay. I remember working with you and then having like we'd be working for 4 hours to get one recording.
Oh god, those were the days, eh?
And the recording was only 35 minutes. But every time we'd get started, 15, 20 minutes in, you cut out. The next recording, 12 minutes in, I
You
cut
cut
out.
out.
And I'd be like, ah. So it's like we started recording at 11 o'clock my time. And you go, what time is it there now? 5. The sun's coming up. I might have a problem. And people could always tell the nights that we'd had a rough recording because I'd get up to stream the next afternoon, and they'd be like, "Why are you tired?" Reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But anyway, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. We must do this again more often.
thank you for being on. If this works out, that means people hit the like button and leave comments. We might do this again.
And support Fiaura on Patreon.
But they gotta support you too. Look, you're not me.
This video's going your.
You're not
It's going
me.
on your channel, so it's more content.
That's fair. That's fair. But you're just like me. This is your primary income source. And our primary income source is not like I don't have any sponsors. I don't take sponsorships. Remleiz does, and that's a decision the two of us make, and we respect each other.
I don't take sponsorships because last time I took sponsorships, it wasn't even financially. They just sent me some models, so it wasn't even financial sponsorship.
Okay, so I'm gonna rephrase this. Neither of us are sponsored by anything. We're not gonna try to sell you Surfshark or Raid Shadow Legends. I can tell Raid Shadow Legends is not a good game because there's no porn of it.
Before we go, and I can talk about this because Alpha did mention about on his Twitter, so publicly, so I can talk about this. But before TTS stopped, Alpha was approached by Raid Shadow Legends with a sponsorship deal. Do you know how much they offered him?
$20.
10 grand.
Oh,
They offered him 10 grand. It was to the point like he actually asked the rest of the crew, like, should I actually take this or not? Because it's a lot of money, but at the same time, I don't want to compromise my artistic integrity. And we were all at the point like, look, for 10 grand, we will totally understand if you decide to take that sponsorship because 10 grand is 10 fucking grand, you know?
yeah. Oh, damn.
I mean, I'm saying, fair play to Alpha for, you know, not taking it because that's a lot of money to give up, especially considering the fact he's got a kid now, you know? But at the same time, it's like, you know, if he did take it, we'd perfectly understand why. Because I'm pretty sure if I was offered 10 grand, I'd probably take it myself. Because 10 grand's a lot.
Yeah, that's tempting. But yeah, no, I don't take.
But do you know how much they offered me when they contacted me?
I don't know, $100.
Yeah, and I basically told them to fuck off. It's like, yeah, not for $100, mate. Piss off.
Yeah, I get paid sponsorship things in my email box every week. Like, I'm not even joking. I get at least one a week. And the answer has always universally been, no, thank you. I don't take those. If you did any research about my content, you would know this email was a waste of your time.
The best ones where you get so like, hello, insert channel name here. I'm a huge fan of your work.
I know, right?
I'm sure you are.
And then the stupid part is once I tell them no, 80,
they're super pushy, don't they?
Like still 80% of them are still trying to get me to take it and then want me to download this huge file to look over everything. And I'm like, I'm not downloading a file. If you can't send me a contract in plain English, why would I even think about saying yes?
To be honest, the main reason I don't take sponsorship these days is because, well, a lot of people who take sponsorships end up getting hacked because a lot of people will disguise themselves as a fake sponsor and then you open a PDF, oh, congratulations, your account's been hijacked.
Yeah.
Because it happened to a lot of people. Like, it happened to Astartes, you know, before he was picked up by Games Workshop proper. I'm pretty sure it happened to Major Kill at least once.
Yeah.
Because I know his channel was hacked at one point. And it actually happened to Did You Know Gaming the other day. Their channel, their account actually got hacked.
But like to me, it's like if you can't, you know, phrase it in plain English in an email without me having to download a file, I'm not even going to consider it to start with. And then what makes it worse is I'm not even going to consider it anyway because you're not going to offer me enough money to compromise my own integrity.
No. Again, if you offer 10 grand,
but the real point is, we only make money if you guys decide to give us anything. I want to say nearly 99% of my income is strictly from my viewers. That's not a joke. People are like, what about ad revenue?
So to everyone watching, be nice and help support Fiaura so she can keep making more content.
Him too. He makes more stuff on YouTube than I do, but I think that's because he doesn't stream and write books too. That's strictly the only reason he makes more stuff on YouTube. If he could stream, I guarantee you he would.
I tried streaming once and like I couldn't even get the game to run properly. Like it was running on my computer, but it would not move at all on screen for everyone else. All everyone saw was just a black screen. Yeah, it was weird.
But yeah, we only make money if you guys decide to give us anything, and that's the truth of the matter. I think Remleiz might make $100 a month on ad revenue, and I might
more than that. I'm not gonna lie about that. It is more than that, but I won't say the exact amount.
And I don't make more than $500 a year off of ad revenue from 3 different sources: Twitch, YouTube, and Squarespace. Total ad revenue is maybe $500 for the whole year. I can't pay my rent with $500 for a month. But yeah, leave comments, let us know your thoughts. It would be appreciative.
And support Fiaura on Patreon so she can make that Pokemon Smash or Pass video.
Good night, everybody!